She didn't scream, but the desert heard it. The light shone down on the deserted plain, scorching the sand till it shimmered like a piece of glass. A young lady staggered in the heat on her bare feet. Her breath was ragged and she was bleeding. The sole something that covered her shaking body was a she had ripped kilometers off a single palm. Back by an ancient windmill, dust stuck to her tears. The smell of blood combined with perspiration and anxiety. Each step appeared to it could be her final one. By the time she arrived at Cole Barrett's ranch, everything has already become white. Nora Pike was her name. Even so, Cole wouldn't discover that till the sun rose. Up nobody has ever saw a girl run so far alive in those areas. She shoved herself up against his wooden cabin's hard wall. The boards creaked beneath her as she shook so violently. She froze when the door opened. Cole had a cap over his wrinkled face and a rope draped over one shoulder. His gunmetal-colored eyes were fixed on hers. Throughout his life, he had witnessed wounded livestock, dying men, and even Apache raids, but nothing like this. Neither spoke for a considerable amount of time. The silence was broken by the wind, which was as scorching and dry as oven breath. Then her lips trembled and cracked. "Please," she muttered. "Don't send me back." Cole moved closer, taking his time so as not to frighten her. Quick enough to demonstrate his intention to assist. He put his old canvas coat over her shoulders after unbuttoning it. He could feel the bruises that no man should ever leave on a woman beneath the coat, as well as the sharp bones of hunger. He led her inside. Every sound, including the hiss of the kettle, the creak of the floorboards, and the scrape of his boots, made her wince. She started crying when he grabbed for a bowl of water and a fresh cloth. He said, "What happened to you?" At first, she shook her head. Then, like stones bursting through ice, the words came out. "Every night my father creeps in." Her voice was raw and full of something broken cracking like the sky before a storm. Her gaze darted to the ground as she halted. She murmured, "He ain't my real father," nearly choking on her words. The words hung in the air, heavy and incorrect for a heartbeat, and Cole froze. The desert beyond seems to cease breathing as well. Then she broke down in tears. It's the kind of cry that originates from a place too deep to be fixed, but it's not loud. Cole knelt next to her. He remained silent. He didn't inquire further. Until the shaking stopped, he simply continued to wrap the gauze over her wrists. A hawk outside let out a cry that reverberated through the still heat across the canyon. Cole sensed something deadly stirring somewhere in that sound. Not sympathy, not fear, but rage. He glanced first at the door and then at her. "You're safe here," he murmured. But in a place like Arizona territory, safety never lasts long. A question was on Cole's mind as he filled the basin with water. "When that monster comes looking for her, how far will I go to stop him?" The following morning was bright and hot, the kind of Arizona heat that causes the air to dance above the ground. Cole was attempting to act as though nothing had changed when he was up early feeding his horses. Wrapped in one of his old wool blankets, a distraught girl slept in his bed inside the hut. He couldn't stop thinking about what she had said and how her voice broke as she spoke. "Every night my dad slips in." It reverberated like a gunshot in his mind. He was unable to stop hearing cowboy love stories. It wasn't until Jasper, his dog, began barking in the direction of the gate that he became aware of the dust cloud on the horizon. Cole's eyes were darkened. A man riding quickly on horseback, throwing up dirt as if the devil were behind him. Cole recognized the rider by the time it arrived. If from Pike, the man whose face was red from both the sun and the liquor, and whose eyes were constantly half angry, half intoxicated. "Where is she?" he yelled before even getting off the horse. "My girl is in there with you. Do you not?" Cole remained still. He simply stood with arms folded at the corral fence, tight jaw. He said, "She's not yours. She's also not accompanying you everywhere." Efim chuckled, harsh and boisterous. "Do you really think I won't enter and grab her?" Cole's hand fell to his butt. Colt, not to sketch, merely to remind the what side of the law was he on. "On," he answered. "You take one more step, and you'll be hobbling home." The man gave it a shot. In any case, He pushed against the gate. Cole seized his wrist more quickly than a snake would strike. His grip was like iron from years of breaking wild horses. He sent the man face first into the dust by twisting his arm in a single, fluid motion. Ephraim rolled over and spat grit out of his mouth while cursing. "Old man, this is far from over," he snarled. "You'll regret ever touching what belongs to me." Calm yet icy, Cole gazed down at him. "You never had her Western narratives. You married her mother, not her, Ephraim." With a glare, Ephraim got back on his horse and rode out in the direction of the hills. He was pursued by Jasper's barking until he vanished into the heat. Nora was standing near the window in the cabin, her fingers tightly gripping the blanket across her shoulders. "Look," she said, "he's coming back, isn't he?" Cole took a while to respond. "Let him try," he remarked after pouring her a cup of water. She seemed to be attempting to determine whether he truly meant it, as she observed him for a considerable amount of time. Cole turned to face the open door as the dust and sage scent of the desert rushed in. He was aware that the man wasn't finished. Ephraim and other men never stop until someone stops them. Cole also knew something else in his heart. Ephraim won't be traveling alone the next time. Riding closer than the wind was trouble, and the Wild West Stories podcast's secrets were always hidden in the desert. That night, the sun descended behind the Hua Mountains, illuminating the range with golden light. Cole's stomach remained tense even if the air became softer. He suspected that there was more hardship ahead for them. Quiet evenings out here frequently indicate that someone was approaching you covertly. With her hands still trembling a little, Nora assisted him in bringing in the horses. Despite her best efforts, worry was evident in the way she kept looking at the road. Cole was aware of this, but he remained silent and continued to work steadily and slowly so she could feel his rhythm. Cole's intuition proven correct by the following morning. Behind the barn, a hoofprint trail emerged, slicing through the sand. This time 2 sets, one was Ephraim's. Someone who knew how to ride hard owned the other, heavier. The two arrived at the gate at around midday. Before he had even approached, Ephraim was yelling and brandishing his weapon like an inebriated preacher. With his face partially obscured by a black hat, the man next to him remained mute. Cole was able to identify that slump and the way he looked around without turning his head. Jeb Crowley was a Charleston native who had previously ridden shotgun for the stage queue. Cole took a hesitant step outside and used a rag to wipe his hands. "Good morning, boys," he said. "Are you certain you want to be here?" Ephraim spat in the ground. "You have something that I own." Jeb's eyes met Cole's before he could respond, and everything shifted. The man froze as if he had witnessed a ghost. Jeb was present outside Tombstone that evening when Cole Barrett dropped 3 rustlers in less than 10 seconds to save the marshal. Cole was said to have never missed. For years, Jeb had kept that story inside of him like a bullet he was unable to remove. The sound of the Winchester and the subsequent expression in Cole's eyes will always stick in Jeb's memory. He backed his horse up slowly as he stood here. "No, Ephraim," he responded in a quiet voice. "Man, I'm not into Wild West romance films." "Not today," growled Ephraim. "What's wrong with you?" Jeb shook his head while maintaining eye contact with Cole. "I enjoy taking deep breaths." "That's what then." Without saying anything more, he turned his horse and went away. Ephraim was abandoned, red-faced and enraged, screaming obscenities that echoed over the wide-open space. Cole remained still. All he did was gesture to the hills. "Before the sheriff finds out how close you were to dying, you should start riding." With a final curse, Ephraim rode off while kicking dust in his own face. Nora emerged from behind the barn once the ruckus had subsided. "That man," she muttered. "He seemed afraid of you." Cole gave a shrug. "Some people recall what they ought to." Then, already considering his next move, he turned to face the house. Ephraim is a troublemaker who never gives up. That night at first, Cole had his coffee cooling in his hands as he sat on the porch. He was aware of his next course of action. He would ride to Tombstone tomorrow to talk to the sheriff, an old buddy. It was time to put an end to this properly. Take a deep breath, make yourself a cup of tea, relax, and let this tale to settle in your chest before you leave. Then let me know what time it is, where you are, and from what location you are listening. To ensure you don't miss what occurs as Cole rides into Tombstone tomorrow, please hit the subscribe button if you have been following along thus far. The air above the desert was dry and harsh the following morning. Cole informed Nora he would leave before the heat increased, saddled his old bay horse, and tied a fresh shirt to the back. Her face was pale, but it was stronger than he had ever seen it as she followed him to the gate. She questioned, "You sure you need to go?" He gave a nod. "Your tale has to be heard by the law." The majority of the day was spent traveling to Tombstone. Heat waves rolled off the sand like water as the sun burned the asphalt. Cole was familiar with every bend in the trail, every dry stream bed, and every hiding place frequented by criminals. Near dusk, the town came into view, along with a group of wooden roofs and the sound of hammering coming from a new bar within the sheriff's office. The scent of gun oil and overheated coffee permeated the air. Sheriff Tom Grady grinned as he looked up from his desk. "I assumed you had gone silent on that ranch if it wasn't Cole Barrett." Cole smiled wearily. "Didn't come for small talk. I have a girl's story that you should hear, Tom." He told him everything. Regarding Nora's half-dressed appearance and half-dead. Regarding the bruising, the man who identified as her sobbed, "Dad." The sheriff paid attention without interrupting, his mouth clenching with every detail, a bit more. When he was done, Tom got up. "You performed correctly. Bringing her over here. I'll send Doc Harris to draft a statement, after which we'll obtain a warrant." By dusk, the physician verified everything. The sheriff, mounted with 2 deputies in Benson's direction to Fram Pike, should be arrested. Cole remained in the city. Pacing outside the workplace, observing the over-the-rooftops, stars emerge. When the cyclists came back, it was almost midnight. With a sad expression, Tom got off his horse. He said he wasn't at home. According to the neighbor, he left before dusk. Claimed to have a company close to your property. Cole felt his gut chill. He was aware of what that implied. Before the sheriff could finish, he grabbed his rifle and cap. "Cole," Tom cautioned, "don't act rashly. Men will be sent in the morning." Cole took one glance back. It might be too late in the morning. Throughout the night he rode hard. The dust trail behind him was visible due to the full moon. It felt heavier every mile you got closer to the ranch. He imagined Nora by herself in that tiny cabin, perhaps dozing off and listening to everything outside the window. Cole noticed smoke coming from the direction of his barn as the first rays of morning hit the hills. His heart ceased to beat. With his firearm ready, he kicked the horse more quickly. The gate was ajar. The scent of gunpowder and charred wood permeated the air. Then he heard a scream someplace close to the corral, and it wasn't the kind a guy would forget. Before his horse had even stopped, Cole leapt from it. The yard was filled with low-lying smoke. The door to the barn was ajar. A figure hurried quickly through the haze within. It was Ephraim, desperate and wild-eyed, clutching a shaking pistol. Clutching a lantern as if it were her last hope, Nora found herself cornered. Cole entered slowly, steady yet rifle level. "Put it down," he commanded. With a dry laugh that crackled like the fire behind him, Ephraim laughed. "You think you can take what's mine and walk away?" Cole remained silent. He only glanced at Nora before turning back to face the guy who had ruined her life. "She was never yours," he said. "And she never will be." It was a tense moment. On the ridge, dust ascended. Riders are arriving quickly. Since Benson, they had been arriving. The pistol then jerked upward. A single shot was fired. Clutching his leg, Ephraim fell. Outside, boots thumped. Since Benson, Tom and his men had been pursuing Ephraim, riding vigorously all night long. With their weapons lifted, they charged in. "We heard the shot from the ridge," Tom snarled. Breathing heavily, Cole lowered his rifle. "You got here just in time," he remarked. Tom gave one nod. "He will live long enough to be put on trial. Here, justice moves slowly, but when it does, it never forgets." A few days later, the Tombstone courthouse was full. The doctor's report, Cole's testimony, Nora's shaky remarks, and Ephraim Pike's pale face beneath the bruises told the story clearly in front of the judge. The judge struck forcefully with his gavel. Years spent working at the territorial prison. It was justice, not retaliation. Nora grabbed Cole's hand as they stepped outside into the sunlight. Her eyes were no longer fearful, but they were still exhausted. Months went by. People healed at the ranch. Slowly but surely, Nora gained the ability to ride and repair fences so she could laugh once more. Only crickets and the gentle sound of the wind blowing across the grass could be heard in the suddenly silent nights. In the same cabin where Terra had once resided, a baby sobbed for the first time 9 months later. Cole saw Nora cling to the toddler as he stood by the door with his hat in hand. It didn't matter that it wasn't his blood. In the tiny church beside the San Pedro River, he wed her, handed his name and home to the woman and kid. Cole Barrett didn't care that others in the community were whispering that he must be half stupid, half saint. Some guys construct fences while others construct families. Sometimes staying, loving, and giving someone else a chance to start anew are more courageous than fighting with a gun. And thus, beneath the same roof where Dread had resided, a damaged girl found serenity. I'll ask you this then. If she had arrived to your door terrified and shattered, how would you have responded? Would you have left or refused to back down? Please click the like button if this tale touched you, so I know you're still out there. And feel free to subscribe if you think every person should be given another chance. Make another cup of tea for yourself. Lean back and let me know in the comments what time it is, where you are, and from what location. Because there is a tale waiting to be told somewhere.